In a wild turn of events, Brokeback Barnaby is now trying to convince us all that One Nation is the gayest party of them all. Now, obviously, that is just not true. But what I want to do this video is unpack why One Nation is desperately trying to grab some of the pink vote, the vote of LGBT Australians, and also look at One Nation's history on how they've talked about and dealt with LGBT issues. Because it's all well and good to understand that this is just a desperate attempt to win votes, and we all reasonably understand that One Nation is not the party of LGBT Australians. But I want to go through some of the most egregious examples of One Nation's anti-LGBT policies and rhetoric, because this is a party that not only is not for LGBT people, but it is a party that actively wants to make their lives worse at every given opportunity. As always, if you're new here, welcome. If you've seen my other stuff, well, welcome back. Thank you very much for the support on the last video. Again, I do try and respond to as many of you as possible. Please let me know what you think in the comments. I also do appreciate new people subscribing, liking the video, giving me those swipe points. It's really nice that new people are finding the channel, and I appreciate all of you trying to pass on these videos so more people are able to join the community as well. With all that said and done, let's get into the video. What kicked all this off was comments made by a One Nation candidate, Parminder Singh, and what he did was compare being LGBT to having a mental illness. Now, obviously, that's a relatively unacceptable comment. It is not a mental illness to love someone who happens to be the same gender as you. I think most Australians are going to have a really negative reaction to that type of comment. And One Nation has attempted to remove him from the website and immediately disown his comments. They want to create as much distance as possible from that type of rhetoric. The issue is, though, he is not the only individual connected to One Nation who has made similar comments. One Nation Senator Tyron Whitten has effectively made the same comments, and he is still endorsed and representing the party. He has talked about there being 3 options: male, female, or a mental illness. This is not rhetoric that is coming out of nowhere. This is deeply embedded into how One Nation views LGBT Australians, as if there is something wrong with them, if their brain is broken simply because they have found love in a way that these individuals find abhorrent. And to really reinforce the fact that it is deeply embedded within the party, the rhetoric is also coming from the highest officials within One Nation, because Hanson herself has actively tried to fight against policy that would recognize intersex people even exist, rather than contend with the reality that people are having different experiences than them, whether that be from a philosophical understanding of gender or a biological difference. One Nation sees it as an ideology that's infecting society. And unfortunately, the bigotry does not stop there, because you have Cory Bernardi, the leader of One Nation in South Australia, doubling down on previous comments where he attempted to link gay marriage with eventually allowing polygamy or bestiality. He refuses to apologize for these statements, even though he himself admitted they were probably a bit too extreme. The reality was there was never going to be this slippery slope where allowing 2 people who fell in love with each other to get married was eventually going to facilitate that it became legal for a man or a woman to have sex with an animal. And not only do I think attempting to link these things is pretty morally disgusting, I think it is concerning that that thought even popped into a representative's head. I think it's deeply uncomfortable that our representatives are experiencing intrusive thoughts about men or women being able to marry or have sex with animals because of the potential reality that a man and a man could marry each other. It is concerning that our representatives experience that level of panic to the point where that is scaring them because of how deeply unrealistic and bigoted it is. But the thing is, he's not the only member of One Nation who finds gay marriage to be reprehensible, because even Brokeback Barnaby was not in favor of same-sex marriage, and neither was Hanson. Even though Hanson said if the Australian public supported the plebiscite, she would vote for it, she still decided to abstain. She did not actually care about representing the Australian people. she cared about pushing her own beliefs. And her beliefs are negative towards LGBT Australians. She is against the idea of Mardi Gras. She believes that people's sexualities should be hidden from the public eye, but she only ever makes those comments when the sexuality in question is anything other than heterosexual relationships, because she has no issues with straight couples being ads or TV shows or seeing public displays of love between a man and a woman. Her aversion to seeing people's sexuality is confined to sexualities that personally make her uncomfortable. That behind this facade of freedom of speech and freedom of expression, of small government, she is uncomfortable with people truly being free and truly expressing themselves. This is not a party that supports LGBT Australians. There is a reason they're doing this now, and it's not because they've had a change of heart. I think a lot of it has to do with the census. This recent census was unique for two reasons. One, it showed a lot of people, particularly on Twitter, don't understand that Christianity is an umbrella term for a bunch of different individual denominations. So you had a bunch of grand conspiracy theories about the Australian government trying to ignore or erase religious people, but also it was the first time we asked about sexual orientation, and that was not an easy thing to make happen. There had been a lot of political debate over whether this should be included. And one of the reasons for that is when you have statistics that tell you exactly how many Australians are LGBT, you can't just ignore them anymore. You can't frame them as this small vocal minority if you have numbers in front of you that directly indicate this is a bigger percentage of the population than you thought it was. You can no longer ignore the fact that services are underfunded or that people are struggling when their identities are ignored. The census puts real numbers behind Australians' human experiences. And not only is that challenging for even the Labor government, who is broadly progressive in their views of LGBT Australians, but it absolutely puts groups like One Nation or the Coalition in this difficult position where if they want to fight against LGBT Australians, that could mean fighting against up to 10% of the population. And it's easier to convince yourself that that's not going to cause a problem when those numbers aren't in front of you. But the second there are real stats for people to see, that when Labor or the Greens or protesters or just the Australian people can point to the fact that, hey, your policies are going to hurt up to 10% of the country, that's a harder battle to fight. It forces the government to see the LGBT community as real and present. And I don't think One Nation is moving towards the center by any means, but I think they are aware of the fact that they're not going to be able to take control of the government if they stay on the far right of the political spectrum. Let's be clear, the vast majority of people thinking about voting for One Nation are not doing it because they connect to Pauline or Joyce. They do not think that One Nation is the best party for the future of the country. They're doing it as a form of protest. Overwhelmingly, when you ask people why they vote for One Nation, it is as a form of protest. But there is a limit to what people will put up with if they're only supporting you as a form of protest. The reality is, people do not like bigotry. Even conservative voters don't respond well to overt bigotry, and the comments made by Hanson or Joyce or some of the members of One Nation are nothing but overt bigotry. And however you feel about these issues, Australians don't respond well to that. The Australian people have already agreed that LGBT Australians deserve the same rights when it comes to loving their partner. Even conservative Australians generally don't like the idea of the government attacking or inhibiting people who might be their neighbors, co-workers, or family members from loving who they want to. Most voters are going to see this for what this is: a desperate attempt to try and claw some votes away from the Liberals whilst desperately trying to clean up their image without actually dealing with any of their prior mistakes or apologizing for any of those horrifically bigoted comments made by members of One Nation. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you very, very much. I truly do appreciate all of your support. Please like, subscribe, let me know what you think in the comments. I'll try to respond to as many of you as possible. And I also appreciate the swipe points. It helps other people find the channel. But yeah, I think it's just disgusting. I think it's pathetic. I think it's desperate. And I was surprised with how horrific some of the comments made by One Nation politicians actually were. I knew the party was bigoted, but man, I did not think some of those comments were going to be as overt as they were. But hey, like I've been saying for months now, I think it's a scam, in my opinion. I think they're selling you a narrative, and that narrative is not connected to reality whatsoever. But hey, again, thank you for the support. See you in a fortnight.